And if that's interesting enough, then I say, okay, I'm going to spend the extra money. I'm going to do a atomic analysis at the nano level. I want to see how not the molecules, but how the atoms are actually arranged. Because within the natural environment, there's a variation of isotopes that we find here on this planet.
Have you stood in front of a recovered UFO?
I am, boy, I can talk about what's in the book because I got cleared for it. So let me say this. I have had in my possession material that was allegedly recovered from a UFO.
Who gave it to you?
I cannot say.
Okay.
It was, but I have been told, I was warned very, very clearly, this I'll share with you. I was told several years ago that I could never talk about crash retrievals or material, ever. And I signed a paperwork for it, right? So that in itself should be evidence for you. But more importantly than that, it's only been recently I'm allowed to talk about the one piece of material because it's in my book and I got cleared for it.
Okay, let's talk about it.
I have to honor that. So just so you understand, I'm not trying to be evasive. I don't want to go to jail. Okay?
I hear you.
So there is material that I've had access to that was clearly engineered. We had one of the very best, I can't say which one of the very best aerospace companies and government contractors. Okay, so you can try to figure out who that was. Try to replicate.
Sorry,
I'm not saying one way or the other. Tried to replicate that material. And at a cost of $1 million, and it broke the machine, they're able to create this material at a macro level, a sandwich between one piece and another piece. This material, up to 3 years ago, I don't know about now, but 3 years ago, we could not replicate. We could not. We did not have the technology to manufacture it. When you look at this material, and you found out, when we know for sure we've found it and where it was found, temporally there's a problem because this material has obviously been engineered with a technology that at least we're pretty sure we don't have. Maybe the Russians, maybe the Chinese, sure. Back in the 1990s, 1940s, definitely not. That is equivalent to us as if you have a piece of material that says, hey, this is from 1940, whatever. And you look at it and you say, oh, wow, that's pretty interesting because we didn't have that technology. That's like going into, as I've said before, going into King Tut's tomb for the very first time as we've discovered it. And as you chisel away the plaster wall and you peek inside, you see a fully assembled 747 jet. It doesn't make sense. Right. They did not have the technology to do that back then. I don't care what you think, but there it is, right? So how to get in there? It's the same thing. It's the same issue we have here. If we don't even have the technology now, someone did. It came. I mean, it came from somewhere. And when you look at the atomic, so there's 3 levels of analysis, and maybe it might be helpful if I explain it real quick. So, I find this. Okay.
That makes noise, by the way. If you want to do it. No, on the bottom, see the on button. Now hit it.
Okay. Okay.
Little known trick.
So imagine being Da Vinci and walking in a desert in the 1600s and finding this, right?
Yeah, it'd be trippy.
Yeah. So it's made of plastic and it talks. It's magic, right? It's magic. So my point being, it's kind of in the same way. Da Vinci would never expect something like this and would have no idea its use, right? And understand what a battery is and how this speaker works and it's magic. There's 3 types of analysis you would do. First of all, if I find this in the desert and let's say I was Da Vinci and I had the technology, first I'm going to do is I'm probably going to weigh it and I'm going to do a physical analysis. I'm going to say, okay, it's hard, it's solid, it's made of some sort of plastic material, it weighs half a kilogram. Roughly this dimension. It's not electric. It doesn't conduct electricity, but something inside does, blah, 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 blah. If that's interesting enough, that'll warrant a chemical molecular analysis. Now I want to see it. I know it's some hard solid surface, but I want to see the relationship between the molecules themselves. How are they arranged? What is their relationship with the other molecules in there? Well, I analyze this. It's got some copper in it. It's got some lithium. It's got some plastic. Polymer. It's got some aluminum in it, right? And if that's interesting enough, then I say, okay, I'm going to spend the extra money. I'm going to do a atomic analysis at the nano level. I want to see how not the molecules, but how the atoms are actually arranged. Because within the natural environment, there's a variation of isotopes that we find here on this planet. And it turns out that they're natural. There are some that are not natural. And that's the reason why, speaking of King Tut's tomb, this is why it's kind of important. Because for decades, there was a little dagger that we found in King Tut's tomb that we just thought was a neat little dagger. It wasn't until we did the analysis on it that we realized it wasn't from Earth. The metal came from a meteorite. And we know that. And that's when all of a sudden it became important. Like, oh my gosh, this is why they buried him with the dagger, because this is made from meteorite. It's not from Earth, right? It's magical or whatever. There's significance behind it. You know that by looking at isotopic ratios at the atomic level and how they are arranged. And when you find that atoms are arranged with such a level of precision, that takes a lot of technology. It's really, really expensive, right? And the uses for that are fairly finite, at least from our own technological perspective. There's only so many reasons you would want to invest in making something with that level of accuracy. Remember, at a cost of $1 million, we were able to put two pieces together. This is much, much more complicated than that. So that is why material analysis is so important. That's why when you come across a piece of material that's been engineered and then you find out when it was recovered, right? That kind of changes, you could say, yeah, maybe Russia, China has that ability now or has in the last 5 or 10 years, not decades ago. And so that is part of the compelling evidence. And now I'm not a material scientist, but we had people that looked at it, right? There's people that even to this day and age in the government are analyzing stuff. I can't say who, can't say where, but they are interested in analyzing this type of material, and it's happening. So I know I'm not scratching your itch specifically, but I'm trying to have a conversation while getting around any issues that might get me in trouble.
Right.
Because I can't be specific, but I'm giving you an example of how you do analysis, why it's important, and what makes a piece of material so compelling. That's what makes that material compelling.
Yeah, it always fucks with my head thinking about this, because you're assuming you have some, whether it be a crazy advanced civilization or future humans, whatever it is, it's like these beings would have so much more understanding of whatever the physical world is than we do, to the point that I've always said, like, wouldn't they be able to simulate everything ahead of time? Like, wouldn't they be able to simulate a crash happening or something like that so that it wouldn't happen? I mean, you talk in your book about your conversations with Hal Puthoff, for example, on Roswell, where he's got some fascinating thoughts there, but he's like, hey, it was probably some sort of EMP interference from our universe that fucked with the craft falling to Earth, and boom, there were two of them, and one of them we were then able to recover, and then the government tried to cover it up and say it was a balloon. So, when you see things like that, it's like our way less advanced squirrel species is able to have some capabilities that fuck up these civilizations so much that we're able to even get evidence like that, allegedly.
Yeah. So your argument is that, we're the monkeys on the ground. It couldn't be things, if they're those so advanced, how are they allowed to be so vulnerable and susceptible, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we are in a beautiful place here in Hoboken. And again, I'll be respectful of privacy. But I noticed this morning when I was getting up and walking outside the hotel, you had this beautiful view of the Hudson. I mean, it's just gorgeous, just beautiful, beautiful. And, it was only a few years ago that you had what some call a miracle here. You had a commercial jet.
Yep, Sully.
And crashed. What you want to remind your audience what happened?
So it was a Tom Hanks movie later, but they took off from LaGuardia, went up into the sky as they were coming up. Sully Sullenberger, the captain, realized there were birds. The birds came into the engine. Suddenly the plane failed, and Sully used unbelievable skills that he had acquired over 40-some years or something of flying, was able to pull it back around right out here, correctly, as you point out, on the Hudson in between Manhattan and Hoboken, and basically land the plane perfectly such that it didn't crash on impact and split apart, and saved everyone on the plane.
Yeah, amazing, huh? If you're a bird, wouldn't you be asking the same question? These humans are so advanced. How can a dumb bird bring down a jet full of people and almost kill every single human being? A bird.
That's a good parallel you just gave.
Don't forget to tip your bartenders and your waitresses.
So you think that some of this is just straight up a mistake, because again, but let me counter argue that. Maybe we are the separation and advancement of us to birds, which is quite large, let's be honest. Maybe it's not nearly as large as it is with these civilizations. How can we even know that? Like you talk about in your book, not knowing whether or not this is a threat, but treating it as it could be. And like maybe they're on the battlefield getting ready for battle right here, and they've just been doing it for the last, I don't know, 80 years specifically or something like that, because time is, 1 second to them what is 80 years to us. Like, you see where it gets a little convoluted and it gets beyond what we can even like have a scope of intelligence
Well,
on?
I do. And this is why I think this type of conversation is so important, because we are always, we're putting ourselves always in that box of, well, anthropomorphic. If there's so much advantage and knowledge, mistake. Remember, we may be dealing something that is uniquely, potentially not human at all, right? So, it's hard. It's hard to do that because we are innately human. How do you not think like a human if that's all we do, right? So it is. I can see how it gets fuzzy. I can see how people get frustrated and they kind of go through these mental gymnastics of, okay, well, they're millions of years ahead of us. Well, maybe not. Maybe they're not 10 years, 50 years ahead of us. We have evolved more in the last 100 years technologically than we have in the last 100,000. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a logarithmic, it's a curve. That's right. And so is it possible that 100 years from now that we're going to have the exact same ability that they have?
Maybe
possible, right? They may not be millions. They may just be 100 years ahead of us, or they could be from right here. They're just, like I said, little beasties. We're at the point now where we're beginning to interact with them. They've been here all along, baby. We don't know. So we have to keep, and this is why I always tell people, in my opinion, which I don't like to do very often, we should keep all options on the table until they're not on the table. And are there people out there in the government that know more? Probably. Yeah. And they should come out. They should be able to talk to Congress. That's what I'm trying to do, is create an environment where ultimately the conversation can be had and people have the truth, whatever that truth is. Whatever that truth looks like, give the people the opportunity to have the truth and have the conversation for themselves. And then I'm done. I'm out.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.